Welcome to the International Women's Day online forum, Driving Change and Elevating Women. It's so great to have so many women from around Australia actually coming in and zooming in with us. Just love to pay respects to the Indigenous elders past, present and emerging. I'm actually in Perth Boorloo and I'm on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And I celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business. It's great to have a lot of our collaborations with so many amazing organisations around Australia over the last 10 years. We're enjoying 10 years anniversary. I'm one of the founders, actually, of Business Women Australia. I'm the National Director, Lynn Hawkins, and I'd love to hear any of your ideas over the next 6 months as we come together to sort of revitalise Business Women Australia. I'm very proud to have on the call today some esteemed members of our advisory board. We've got Jennifer Tanhay, we've got Sonia Georgescu. Did I say that right, Sonia?
Georgescu, just think George and then
Georgescu.
Yeah.
Maggie Evans-Galea, and we've got Vicky Wu. We also have with us on the call today our chair of the advisory board, Wendy Harper. So thank you, ladies, for joining us on this call, and for all our members and our guests. It's so good to have such a mixture of women from all sectors, all professions, and across the states to come together. So we talk about Business Women Australia as being this beautiful magic mix of owners, entrepreneurs, of executives, professionals, of women on boards, women in C-suite, and emerging leaders, those leaders who want to be around and rub shoulders with experienced women, and for women like me who are experienced to be learning from the young guns coming through. So we focus on these kind of areas of development, very much around leading self first and leading others, around improvement, building better businesses around the world and impacting on those kinds of things that we bring, not only from a talent and an intellectual point of view and an experience point of view, but also in terms of the values that we bring to influence change. And we've done a lot of work over the years, sort of working on our shared values in Business Women Australia. And that really does shape a lot of what we do and how we co-create with our members. So it's very member-driven, and it's been exciting to see, particularly this year, 2025, we've found that it's been quite a growth in our memberships. Just in the last month, I had a look, and we've got lots of new members signing up. So we'd love to have more of you. And if you are interested and you're a member that's a subscriber and thinking about joining or thinking about partnering with us, we are very open and now in a really good position to be able to do some amazing partnership opportunities with corporations. Our podcast coming up, we've got the fabulous duo from SK Design, Sarah Knox and her business partner Heidi Mathakis, and they are going to give us some insight into running a interior design business. And our next April podcast will be breaking barriers around transformational leadership, growth and balance with the fabulous Jo Robin. Jo comes from a background in venture capital, and she's worked with some of the big tech companies, including, I think, Afterpay, quite a few of those big companies. And she's been able to see them scale from ideas right through to being large unicorn sort of companies. Lots coming up online. Go and check out the calendar on the Business Women Australia website if you're not sure, and make sure you're subscribed to our e-news so you don't miss out on anything. We've got lots of things coming up in person as well as online, and I'm looking forward to the end of year leadership retreat where we're going to be doing some really important work. Wonderful to have the fabulous Vida Carlino, who's a leader in our organisation, on this call today. Vida and I have been really looking at this to be a very powerful investment of your time. We've taken out the whole of the resort. We've only got 15 places available left. We would love to see women who want to spend some time out to work on themselves as leaders, to actually help reshape our leadership from the inside out. Just very quickly, Vida, is there anything that you'd like to share about that retreat? We do have a podcast coming up we will deep dive into that, haven't we? If you want to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, we've got the podcast coming up, and we've got a few videos that are going to circulate over the next couple of months talking about different aspects of the leadership course that we'll be running. It's very much a different approach to leadership, because we are focusing on leadership, reshaping leadership from the inside out. So we will be incorporating traditional practices of leadership, but we will be doing some more introducing some ancient wisdom practices as well in understanding leadership, so we can really embody our leadership style and make greater impact with it.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to doing that with you, Vida, and we've got a great cohort already booked in and looking for 15 more fabulous leaders to join us. If you are on social, we love your support. We love you to engage with our members and with their brands and with all the wonderful things and knowledge that they're sharing across LinkedIn, across Meta and Instagram, and of course on our website we have all our recordings, we have our member directory. There's loads of resources on there. You can catch up across any of our main channels for our podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, on YouTube. Wherever you look, you'll find Business Women Australia. So thanks for being here. I'm not going to start with this breakout. What we're going to do is I'm just going to throw straight away to the wonderful Maggie. Maggie, if you could actually share with us, what are the things that you're experiencing and what are the things that you're seeing from your perspective being the biggest threats to diversity and inclusion? Maybe we could kick off with your insights.
Thank you, Lynn, and thanks everyone for joining us. It's terrific to be part of Business Women Australia. This is a really important area right now, obviously given our economic and geopolitical climate, our recent referendum here in Australia, but more importantly, the whole conversation around diversity, equity and inclusion that's happening in many different spaces, including here in Australia at the political and the business level. I'm in the STEM sector, science, technology, engineering and maths, including the health and medicine sector. So I have a helicopter view of the sector and really interact with industry, government, as well as academia and general nonprofits who are in the ecosystem as well. And I guess what I've seen, having lived in the US for many years and then lived in Australia, grew up here and returned here, I've seen a real shift in the level of concern for women's safety, both in their health, but also in their workplaces. So that full stop. But in an economic climate where things are tight, the first thing to go is DEI. So a lot of women at work are seeing these programs that have been introduced disappear purely on a funding basis. But then also when you give permission to the conversations that are currently happening at a global scale in this space, it really opens the door for things to be cut just because they're DEI. And so I think there's a lot of concern right now around women's health, women at the workplace, women in the home. And I feel that tension almost everywhere I go, every conversation that I have at a senior level, particularly around decision-making tables. Businesses right now are being careful how they speak about DEI, simply because it is a polarizing issue in some cases, and then you'll have a whole bunch of people who sit on the fence and could swing either way. And therefore, they tend to be the silent ones right now in this kind of situation because they're watching. So I think that's really what I've seen as a shift. Australia made such great progress, particularly in the STEM space. We've been talking about diversity in STEM at a very high national level in organisations across the ecosystem for over 10 years. Women in STEM Australia, which I co-founded over 10 years ago, was at the very start of that journey, and it just escalated to a fantastic cacophony of conversation, solution making, and change making. And that to me was a really exciting phase. We are now in the tough spot, and right now I encourage us all to bed down and stay strong and stick with it.
I'm going to come back to you and talk to you about some of those solutions and changes that you've seen are working well. But before I do, I'd just like to throw over to Sonia, if I could. Sonia, I mean, you're having conversations with women at the grassroots. You know, what are you hearing and what experiences are women sharing with you about what's going on?
Yeah, I think at the grassroots level, I mean, a lot of the women that I'm around are running their own businesses, having exited corporate because they don't feel they fit in, and or can't get ahead in those spaces, and or don't are not, more than not valued. It's really feeling like they're not getting the development opportunities that they should be getting. There's a conversation around also going back on a part-time basis versus going back full-time, and what that does to their opportunities or development and or advancement opportunities. There was a little bit of reprise during the sort of COVID time when everyone was coming back, working from home, which allowed that flexibility. But now we've got these conversations coming from big corporates and government about return to work on a full-time basis, which sort of tends to reduce that. It gives less opportunity to these women. So there's a lot of talent around, but they're not in corporate, they're not in big business, and they're influencing from the outside. But we're not necessarily seeing those changes where sort of some of the power brokers sit.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. And I'm just going to ask Wendy, because Wendy's also got that a perspective from, sort of the level of not being inside a corporate, but also seeing so many other issues around this erosion of equity. Wendy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the whole journey, and this is a generational journey, it didn't just start with us, and so we're really on a journey to create that equality. So everything that's happening is part of that gain, including even sometimes the sense or experience of setbacks. I think in terms of resilience in the journey, while we may not feel like we have much individual control over the circumstances around us organisationally or even politically, what we do have is this capacity to develop our response mechanisms to these levels of adversity that we're facing. And, if we're able to cultivate within ourselves an approach or an angle to come from on a personal level to those challenges and harbour the most value that we can gain out of these experiences, then that inner development side and capacity building within ourselves means that when we do meet it out there, we're better able to deal with it in a way that is most constructive. So the less reactionary we are and the more responsive we are, and that's a capacity that we have within ourselves to develop. And this is where our agency is in terms of change makers and change leaders. It comes down to, from that macro perspective to the very micro, is what we're doing with that capacity that we have within. And change starts there, and I know that's that's a slogan that we hear a lot, and it's actually true. So the more we're able to engage with one another and share and grow and develop that confidence, then when we do meet those challenges, it's a little bit like, it's the art of Tai Chi and communication, or Aikido, where we're better able to take resistance and convert it into support. So that would be my encouragement to everyone, is to use that cognitive dissonance that we feel along the way as a growth point, and And sometimes it's challenging to see the value. And this is where sharing with other women who are having similar experiences can be so valuable, because out of those sharings comes the answers that we already have inside.
Absolutely. And look, if there anyone has a burning desire to share something as a part of the recording, please put your hand up. We will have some time to share off recording at the end, towards the end as well, where I will hold the recording if we want to share more personal experiences that we might be facing in our communities or in our workplaces. But I'd just like to throw, if I could, to Vida, because Vida's been doing, over the last 10 years, Vida's been holding space for women in our community and has a very deep insight into the sorts of things that are shared. And obviously, tell us, Vida, what's bubbling up for you right now?
I really feel touched by what Wendy said. I so resonate with what you spoke about, because it's like, the more we can hold space for each other, the more we can listen to each other, the more we can make room for diverse conversation to be heard, the deeper our connections, the deeper our understanding, the deeper our impact, and the more resourceful we come to be responsive instead of reactive. And I found over the last few years, there's a pandemic of over busy and overdoing. And in that state, it's not until women come and actually can be still and have a moment that they realize they're quite disconnected to what's going on around them. So busy doing the productive side, but losing connection with their heart and what's really important to them. And I found that has just escalated over the last couple of years. And I think the more we can hold space for ourselves as well as others, the more in tune we are, the greater our influence and impact with others is.
And what I've found interesting, before we jumped onto the show today, Wendy and I were talking about, but the perspective, a corporate perspective, from a personal perspective, from a non-corporate. And the challenge, I think, for companies, businesses, private enterprises, large corporations, is to create a culture that does enable these kinds of beautiful opportunities for honesty and holding space and being curious about what's going on for each other, being able to build these kinds of corporate cultures, even in environments that are very productive output focused and very KPI focused. There is definitely evidence that being able to have these kinds of moments, bringing the men's sheds, bringing the women's circles into the corporations isn't as crazy as it sounds. But Maggie, I'm very interested because you've got some stories about resilience, innovation, and leadership that you can share with us that really celebrate women's achievements. Maybe if you could take yourself off mute and share with us, some really uplifting stories that you might have come across.
So many. I think everyone has a story, every woman in particular. But I must admit that the most powerful resilience that I have been deeply moved by is the resilience of our Indigenous peoples to come through something like they've been through recently. It just took my breath away. So moving, really, really powerful stuff. Beyond that, in the day-to-day, we have women in the STEM sector who operate in very male-dominated areas. And it's often a very unstable type of career for a researcher as they come through their career, particularly at the junior level. You can be rolling on anywhere from a 2-month to a 12-month contract as a senior researcher who has spent 10 years of education getting to where you are. And you're very accomplished. And as we know in every sector, but particularly in research as well, you build your career at the same time that often there's a parenting aspect that comes into your life, whether that's through adoption, having children, being the favorite auntie, whatever that is. And therefore, there's this clash of growth in that space. And I know of 3 women who have exited their careers, not by choice, but because their contracts ended when they became pregnant and went on parental leave. I have found that confronting at different points of my career, and it really has persisted. It's not something that has completely gone away here in Australia as well. And I think as a society, we allow this to happen. As in a workspace, we allow that to happen, and that baffles me. But to the credit of these incredible women, they accepted the reality of their fate in a way that I don't know if I could have, but they turned it around and they became advocates and they became their own leaders. And I think back to what you were saying about agency, Wendy. They found their agency and they found their path. And through that adversity came success into their future. And they can now share the story and say that this is one example of what happens to women, right? And it's not to say, oh, poor me. It's about they say it in a way that I came through this and I learned so much about myself, but also about the world and the way it operates and how we need to change it. And that to me, becoming part of the journey and the trailblazing for positive change, that to me is the most powerful thing that comes out of adversity from stories like that.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. And Wendy, you're nodding. Is there something that you'd like to share that is an example of resilience in play?
In general, just to the principle that Maggie was speaking to, is that we see these where we may experience these things as knockbacks, and when we look at how it helps us focus on our own purpose-driven journey, then out of it can come in so much value and opportunities to contribute value. So I think, what are those trigger points for us? Where do they live, and how many of them do we have to have before we realize that maybe there's a greater purpose to all of these things we're experiencing? And that my experience of that is that when I'm acting from that place of purpose in what I'm doing, then I have much more resilience because I'm actually on my purpose path, and therefore everything that occurs on that path isn't happening to me. I'm stretching into achieving something that I haven't yet achieved, and I just need to work out my way and find my way to that destination. And again, it's when we're feeling like we don't have a choice or things are happening to us that we feel like a victim, was then someone to blame, but we know that doesn't go anywhere, only makes us sick. So how do we quickly step out of that mode and into seeing what we're going through as actually owning it as part of where we are at in our own personal journey, and being able to quickly grab the value, so we don't spend too much time in the wallow, and actually more time acting into more of our purpose. Thank you.
I'll echo that. I think that's really incredibly valuable. I don't think this should happen in this day and age. I am not going to condone that we keep the systems that we have and become more resilient. It's not about fixing women, but I completely agree that we can continue to learn from any experience of adversity. At the same time, we advocate for structural and systemic changes and workplaces where you feel safe and you feel a sense of belonging. And, I do know leaders, male leaders, who will support their people through a parental leave, right? And they're the people that you have to role model for. So I think it is a bit of both, if that makes sense. It's that power for advocacy that came from adversity that I found most exciting.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. Would anyone else like to contribute to this part of the discussion? If you would like to, just take off your mute button. Change with Mel. You're often working in organisations where there's transformation and doing change and looking at organisations who are trying to improve their practices. What's are you thinking at the moment around this
Look, it's really interesting because I've just been approached to do another diversity and inclusion program for a legal firm, and so I'm striving to make it happen in amongst everything else, only because I think we all need to prioritize those activities when we can. So how can we shape them? Yes, and at the same time, I'm also getting pushback from other clients, about, woke culture is over, quite, almost inflammatory kind of words to trying to poke the bear in a way. And I think it's something we all need to watch and balance how we respond to what's happening in the world right now. And I think I went to a Women on Boards event recently and had the joy of listening to Claire Wright, who's fabulous. And it just made me think, we all have to stand our ground and not lose hope while the pendulum swings to the far right. It will come back, but right now we're seeing this swing. So we all just need to, I think, calmly, gently stand our ground, appreciate that people are coming from different perspectives, but also say, that's fine, you can think what you think, and we'll just have to agree to disagree sometimes, and that's okay. But having the, trying not to put the wall up and shut people down, but keeping an open conversation. So yes, but I am encouraged by the fact that yes, there's a legal firm who are generally progressive, but they also have a conservative strain through them. But they're still wanting to progress with this regardless. So that's fabulous. So I think we hold on to those threads through this quite challenging period around the diversity and inclusion space, particularly.
Yeah. Like, for me, I had a conversation just this week with a very intelligent investor. She's an extraordinary woman. She's an internationally well-traveled and educated human. And she said to me, the one thing I do agree with Donald Trump is that there is just man and woman. And of course, that just got my goat up. I said, well, I'm so sorry, I can't sit here and listen to you say that. I have a non-binary child, and, all businesswomen in Australia is all about being a safe place for diversity and inclusion. And I just disagree. Have you ever? And she looks at me and she goes, what's non-binary? And I realized that I said to her, you just need to get out more. I think when, when Giddy's over, let's go out so you can have a chat to my kid, and you will understand that, Donald Trump's picking on a very small minority of humans who are already got it tough enough as it is without being demonized.
Yeah.
It was really hard for me not to be emotional.
Yes.
But I held my ground. Mel, you would have been proud of me. I did all those things you said. I kept the conversation going. We had a big hug at the end. And,
that's great.
And maybe through her experience of me and my family, may be an opportunity for her to learn and shift her views. So, and I think, I was thinking about it. I've been thinking about it a lot and thinking, is it coming from fear? A fear of losing something, a fear of power. Sasha's nodding. Sasha, do you want to take yourself off mute? I'd love to hear your thoughts around this conversation too. Yes, you're off mute.
Well, I won't lie. Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I am Jewish myself, and I immediately, when you're sharing that story, it takes me back to the Jews and what the Jews went through and the Holocaust, and being that minority group, which, I think at the end of the day, it is a fear. It's a fear of the unknown in a way. It's a space that I don't think it's so much different to a religion, a race, a skin color, it's and then we have these beautiful individuals who can come out and express the way that they live their lives. And I guess for some people it's just, I think it is fearful, but simply because they don't know. And to go back to, at the end of the day, just like your beautiful daughter, who, she's a human being first. Before she's anything else, she's a human being. And I mean, certainly as far as I'm concerned, every single human being has a right to be on this earth. Every human being has a right to breathe the air, smell the flowers, contribute to society, and to think that still in this day and age we are judging people for who they claim to be, you know, it's terrifying, really. That's why I was not.
Jennifer, you've got your hand up. Do you want to take yourself off mute? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I have to reinforce what Sasha was just saying. Lynn, I think it's the fear of the unknown, and it's not until you meet somebody and get to know them that you can take that step back. So I know my mum's in her 80s, and some of their great-grandchildren and grandchildren of her friend group are going through a lot of these changes, and they're all getting together and going, how do we navigate this? What do you understand? What do you understand? And it's really quite beautiful. And I had her down at UWA the other day, and I think it's in the sports room. They've got a whole wall of the LGBTQ, you know, evolution over time. And just to stand there with my mum and like go through the evolution, like from the 60s, it was really fascinating. And she felt comfortable enough to ask questions. And I was so proud that they're, as the older generation, they're trying to navigate this. But it's not until someone says, my grandchild is transitioning and I don't know how to handle it, and they're talking about it with their friends. So I think that's beautiful. I think hopefully we will get there. The other thing I was going to say, so I have a business where I deal with lots of different companies on a weekly basis. So we run like scavenger hunts and urban challenges and things. And one of the ways that we're embracing this is we are very diverse in our workforce, and 2 of our staff use wheelchairs, which when you think of an amazing race, you don't normally think of somebody managing it in a wheelchair. So our take on it is the more people see Kerry and Martin and see how they navigate challenges. And I have learned so much. I've learned that there are no apps for directions if you're using a wheelchair. You'll come across stairs and there's no way around it. You'll have to be put in as a car and go on the roads. And it's been really fascinating. But one thing I will say, with all the companies we've used, we have never heard anybody describe them as the person in the wheelchair. So, and they are consciously saying, you know, the lady with the pink hair, or the man with the hat, or, you know, things like that. So, and I've spoken to Kerry and Martin about this at length, and they said that's one of the best things we can do. Just have people interact and understand that there is actually nothing scary about having somebody in your workplace that uses a wheelchair, or, you know, or anything at all. So yeah, so I think hopefully little by little we will get there, and we'll all find our way to express like what we can do differently to change the perceptions of people.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's Jennifer. It's a good reminder, actually, of the small steps and the little things that we can do at a personal level, as well as at a system and a structural level. I know one of my mentees did an audit of University of Western Australia for wheelchair access with a wheelchair person. They recorded everything and then provided it back, not even as a project, as a student project, but just as a collaborative project that they decided to be proactive and give it back to student services as evidence and ideas. And the university actually did implement majority of what they could. So it's a great example of that agency and taking responsibility, but actually being proactive around making the difference, but also getting, you know, a co-creator with you. And we were talking about co-creation, you know, and that's what's at the heart of Business Women Australia. Vicky, you've taken yourself off mute. Would you like to share with us what's coming up for you?
Yes, I love to. I grew up in China, and I've been told, like 1978 at that time, I've been told a powerful phrase: women hold up half the sky. That's how I grew up. Do you understand why women hold up the half sky? And in my culture, women were always expected to be strong, capable, and independent. And so when I moved to West Australia and saw women fighting for equality, and I was confused. I saw women already in power. I even talk to my partner occasionally. I just can't understand. Honest, by over time, I realized something important. Empower isn't just about opportunities, politics, or external support. It's about how we lead ourselves. No matter what challenge we face, our mindset, our choice, and our action decide our future. So my message is self-leadership is the key to real empowerment. Policies and opportunities are important, but true success starts with how we show up ourselves. That's my message.
That's beautiful and beautifully and articulately said. Thank you, Vicky. I hope you're going to be able to come across to our Bali retreat, because that's exactly what that's all about. That could be, I could just take that snippet and push that out and say, come to Bali with us. That's just amazing, and such a great reminder about self-leadership. And that is important, but it is also, what are the things that we can do to influence the systems that have changed? I mean, women have been fighting for systemic change to help other women who don't have perhaps the voice or the strength or the capability or the education or the place in society to have a voice. And I think that's something that as a community, you know, we have to be really mindful of, is that we're in a very privileged position, even to be able to come on this call today, that we've got roles that are senior or flexible enough for us to be here today. Okay, what I'd like to do now is just to maybe throw it back to you, Sonia, to actually share with us some of the things that strategies that you've seen around overcoming the threats to, you know, this sort of the progress we've made.
So I've got my hand raised and now I'm going to lower it. Look, I think there's been a lot of talk about quotas and whether or not they're impactful in terms of assisting. And I think it's a bit of a necessary evil. We do need to keep an eye on where we're tracking and how we're tracking from a broader perspective. And I was going to say the other thing is that, you know, we're talking about diversity and inclusion, and an important aspect of that is the equity piece, and actually not losing sight of where we're tracking on the equity piece, because that is the thing. I mean, whilst we talk about these numbers of, whatever it is, 21%, I think it is at the moment, there's a difference. But the reality is there's so much more to that figure, and why it is where it is, and what it means from the perspective of opening up, giving agency to women, but also changing men's opportunities in this space as well. And this was a conversation I had with my husband last night about it. And he said, we really absolutely need to have women on parity so that men can actually empower them as well, and empower themselves to do something different. As it is, when we're going back to the part-time space and women going on leave and having maternal responsibilities, etc., men want to be engaged. They want to, I mean, men like my husband, I know there's probably others that are different, but he said, we haven't at the moment got a choice, because we've got this situation where women aren't being elevated to these senior positions based on, this the disequity in what's available. So it really is about bringing some of these people on board that actually do not suffer from the issue themselves, but are supporters of, and start to share that voice and be vocal about it in the forums that they have power in. And I know that's a bit off track, Lynn, but that was what I was kind of, I feel that, without the discussion on parity, you know, we can do diversity and inclusion, but not be equal for all people. You know, we have these organizations that have, you know, they'll have 5 men in them. And I see this so much, it frustrates me in everyday life, you know, the board or the senior leadership team, etc. And then they'll have one woman and she might be of color, or she might be, you know, and that's their tick box on the diversity and inclusion agenda. And, you know, and we don't want to lose sight of the fact that it's actually about equal opportunity as well, and making some of those changes. So
absolutely. Look, I'm going to set up some breakout rooms if I can. I will hold the recording too for when we come back and share sort of some particular things that we're seeing in our own workplaces, and the step that we can do either in our workplace or our community or the business to address a priority that we think is really important, that's coming out of this conversation or out of our deeper thinking outside this. So I'd like you to, I'm going to put you in groups of 3, and I want you to discuss what you think your next step would be to do in your main place to address the priority that you want to address. So that one will mean that you have to share what that priority is and why, and then talk a little bit about your, you know, what's your place that you want to make that impact, and what that step might be that you're going to take away from this conversation today. So I'll just, are there any questions on that? Because I will, if you want to take a photo on that, that would be great, because because I'm presenting this, I've lost my ability to, oh, here it is. Here's my breakout rooms. I'll pause the recording. Yeah, so thank you everyone for all your heartfelt sharing, for the experiences that are very personal but also very powerful in today's open roundtable discussion. And for those of you who have managed to stay on right through to the end, well done you. We're going to be able to co-create so many extraordinary ways to make impact in our communities around Australia as a Business Women Australia leadership group. And with the support of our wonderful advisory board, I'm super excited about what we can do and continue to do with the leaders in the community who have actually come and joined our community and want to do things to make a change. If I can just throw to Wendy Harper for final words, checking out.
Yeah, I think the territory we have covered here, from the macro level of systems to the micro focus on ourselves, to the inside transformations we can do, to what we can do and take action out there. I think we've covered the north, south, east and west of everything wonderful about International Women's Day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Wendy. Over to you, Change with Mel.
Thank you, Lynn. This group is so fabulous, and it's so nice to share what we're going through and where we're coming from. And what I really took out of today was, you know, standing strong in and sharing our values and just standing comfortably within those shoes and not feeling like we're being pushed back due to what's going on around the space. So I think having sessions like this just confirms and ratifies that kind of thinking in my own brain about, let's just stand our ground comfortably, calmly, and wait for that pendulum to start to swing back.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
start to push it back, maybe.
Yeah. Don't let it go too far out the door.
Your
Sonia.
call's correct.
Sonia.
I've participated, and observed many women's forums, particularly around International Women's Day. Honestly, this is so different, like such an inspiring, uplifting, real conversation that is just, you know, I'm leaving this room with so much hope, you know, and positivity, which is just a testament to the group. I just find it extraordinary we can have these conversations. It's, you know, so thank you everybody for your contribution.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Over to Vida.
I just feel very enriched from the conversation, and it's opened my awareness and perspective, and I feel like I have new ideas and insights into what I can implement and what difference I can make by just making a few changes. It's also this whole idea about like where I work, which I'm a, solopreneur, it's like, it's all women. And I've never even thought of that before. So this conversation has had a big impact on me. So thank you so much, everybody. It's very powerful, very, very genuine, real, and very masculine and feminine. And that's the beauty. It's very balanced. Got the best of both worlds here.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
thank
Vic.
you.
Vicky.
Yeah, as Rita said, very masculine and feminine. And for me here, I would like to challenge for you all today, no matter what your goal may be, have one small positive step towards it today.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Vicky. You're like our cheerleader. I love that. Over to you, Catherine Dixon.
Yeah, and apologies again for the late arrival. So I guess my perception is based on coming into a conversation that was well advanced. As always, and I'm not sure who said it, it might have been Vida, it might have been Mel, the conversations in BWA are always really authentic and really real. And they are, I always step away from them feeling, yep, there's something I want to do, need to do, or, yeah, look, I think it's a little thing, but it's something I can do. And I think that comes back to the value. It is a very different International Women's Day conversation. Often working in financial services, you're seeing something that's very much focused on finances and well-being and all of those things for women. So I've really enjoyed what I did manage to get to. So I'll go and listen to the first half.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine. And thanks for coming in, even though late. It's so important. If you can arrive wherever, that's always fine. So anyone who might be catching this recording and you're thinking next time I want to join, or it's a bit late, it's no problem joining late. And if you have to leave early, there's no issue with that either. Over to you, Maggie. Final words.
I have been in many conversations in this space around gender equity, diversity, inclusion, and also allyship. I would have loved to have drawn on allyship a little bit more and gone a bit deeper. But I think because I'm in a different group, Business Women Australia, the reason I really became involved is simply because you're a different bunch of women and you're all leaders and you do really diverse things across business. And I have often been surrounded by women in science, technology, engineering, and math. So I wanted to shake up my world. And I'm really glad that I did, because the conversation today has been broad, it's been deep, it's been high, and it's traveled the journey of the uncomfortable and the comfortable, if that makes sense. I absolutely loved what Change with Mel said around let's stand quietly in our space and who we are and by our values and be very grounded with that, but also listen. I think if there's one powerful thing I learned from Indigenous people in response to that referendum that stayed with me very, very strongly is their response to it. That yes, they were hurt, yes, they felt unsafe, but they also realised that there was a whole part of Australia's population that they did need to engage with more deeply, that they did need to connect with, and that population had to connect in with them, right? I feel I've been reflecting on the current geopolitical climate and the conversation around DEI. I too am asking myself that question. How have we become so disconnected as people that we can't understand each other? How have we become so polarized in our politics, in our education space, in where we work, how we work, what sector we come from, where we are from our background, whether we're disabled, with a disability or not? So this has really stayed with me. We need to connect. We need to talk to each other. And so, part of my commitment and pledge going forward is to enter spaces I'm not normally in, and to be in uncomfortable conversations where I might find it really hard to hear. And I think it's important that we listen. And so, you know, thank you for today's conversation. I walk away enriched as well. I think that was a beautiful way of putting it. So thank you. I really appreciated the opportunity.
What a lovely roundup. Thank you, Maggie. That is just extraordinary. So our outcomes, I think, are achieved. No bubbles, no bling at this meeting. No one had to organise a venue. No one had to organise catering. No one had to listen to fluff. No one had to be lectured to. We came away with actions, co-creation ideas to safeguard diversity and inclusion. We're all committed to building a collaborative network to amplify the impact of change and to safeguard what women before us and men before us and non-binary people and everyone else before us have actually worked hard to achieve, and will self-manage and inspire a new, renewed commitment to driving progress in the face of adversity and challenge with joy and with the spirit of the naughtiness that I like to bring to every occasion. I can't have myself up finishing off like that. Thank you so much for being here. Love you to bits.
Happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Happy International Women's Day.
International
Don't judge
Women's
me
Day.
if you want to bling up
Thank
and
you.
go and drink some champagne. Normally that would be me, but I have a house open tomorrow.
Take care. See you.
Ciao. Ciao.
Bye.
Oh.